My name is Melanie Greenhouse. I co-founded the series back in 1994 and directed it. Thank you. For the first 10 years, its first decade, so I'm proud of that. But I am honored to be called out of retirement to host this evening's event. And for those of you who are new to the Arts Café, it is a three-part journey. We will start with our opening poet, Joan Seliger Sidney, and then move on to music, have a brief intermission where you'll get to have a snack, and then tour the galleries some more, and then we'll move on to our featured poet, the highlight of the evening, Marilyn Hacker. So, as most of you know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But you may not know it contains the following days. Today is National Train Your Brain Day, and it's also National No Bra Day. It has been known as also National Dessert Day and Be Bald and Be Free Day. Oh, some of you are very free. And tomorrow is National Cheese Curd Day and National Grouch Day. Sunday, October 16th, is called National Feral Cat Day. And my favorite, Sunday, is also National Dictionary Day. So be sure you let your dictionaries know how much you appreciate it. So we'll move on to our opening poet. I have a question to ask you. How does one transform a painful experience into art that transcends sorrow? Can art leave traces of one's suffering to be there for others to find comfort? And here's the big question. What is the transformative value of art? In her own words, Joan Seliger Sidney learned to take charge of her writing and her life, reaching toward the limits of what is possible. She has been writer-in-residence at UConn Center for Judaic Studies, led adult writing workshops, and taught creative writing at the Université of Grenoble in France. Not to mention her early career as a high school English teacher, wife, and mother of four. She was a finalist for the Eric Hoffer Award and the recipient of several fellowships and grants, and nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Her books contain poems and prose that are equal parts craft and candor, that require us to put aside our own petty kvetches and to see them in some perspective. I am so pleased and honored to present to you Joan Seliger Sidney.
The first poem that I'm going to read. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. This takes place in Flatbush on East 2nd Street between Avenue P and Quentin Road. And it deals with many things, including how many of you have ever played strip poker? It's called poker. At 11 years old, my daughter reads me the rules, insists we play poker on the Oriental rug, closing both doors for privacy. In the first deal, 2 aces crowd my king. I bid 5, she passes, throws out 2 tens. I win. Not like the first time. Next door in Flatbush, 2 sisters taught me strip poker. With each deal, they giggled, waiting for me to show them more. We sat in a circle, tossed clothes in the center, a pile of shoes socks, hankies, barrettes began to take the shape of girls. First, to unbuckle my belt, I slid off my woolen skirt, stretched the turtleneck over my ears. The room was cold. Like tonight, winter, my hair has turned the color of coal dust and frost laced across their windows above the cellar door. My daughter huddles deep into her cards, her lips parting to blow wisps of black out of her eyes. I see myself in that other room, the radiator coughing steam, no window quilts, no thermal panes. I shiver, hug my shoulders with crossed hands, down to my cotton panties, my first bra. In their skirts and sweaters, they stare. Their eyes, they make me hot and cold at the same time. My cards can't win. No flush, no triplets. They watch my fingers unhook the bra. They stare at my secret, tiny breasts, nipples like sentries in the cold. I hate their eyes, their laugh, their warm clothes, 2 against 1, and I can't stop, nor can I win. Not with the cards they deal me, not in their room. I am naked in my panties when their mother opens the door. She tells me to get dressed, to go home. A memory that still makes me cross my arms and hug my shoulders. I hear the furnace hum below us in the basement. My husband and sons gallop the stairs outside my door. For these few moments, we sit warm and safe inside our house. My daughter deals me another hand. The next 3 are centos. Now, from the Latin word for patchwork, the cento, or collage poem, is a poetic form made up of lines from poems by other poets, though poets often borrow lines from other writers and mix them with their own. A true cento is composed entirely of lines from other sources. So now, dear friends, you've found me out. These next 3 poems are centos, and I can't even tell you. You might recognize a line here or there, but I have no memory anymore of from whom I've stolen. The first cento is called 3 a.m. Sleep refuses to be seduced. Friend, I pull close the Afghan years ago you knit and sit by the fireplace of cold ashes. When did you show me that newspaper photo, a falcon gnawing off his master's hand? After so much hard survival, battered by your husband's words, all you wanted was to disappear. Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, tugging in your dreams, turning night into day. Till now, from the same depths, traveler, you and I. But how to allow this weaving, cleaving, unraveling. Outside, the sea beats the break wall. The moon licks cliffs. I know somewhere on solid ground a dove lands. Now again, sticky papers. My helper. I believe very much in guardian angels, and Sabrina is my latest guardian angel. A year and a half ago, as is my custom, I love to audit. UConn has this great deal, senior audit for $15. Anyone over 62 and over, you can audit as many courses a semester as you want. So one is usually enough for me, and this poem comes, I audited a graduate seminar studying Marianne Moore and Elizabeth Bishop, and somehow this poem I called to Louise, and it's in my imagination something that Elizabeth Bishop might have written to her lover, Louise Crane. To Louise, the silver wasp nests hang like fruit. Maple leaves turn black in the courtyard. Pine needles, zipper, sparrow, lintel, scarf, window shade, and slowly toward the flock of crows, the low fog rolling. Change as our kisses are changing without our thinking. The chasm between what we envision and what we do. I did not come to sing the blues. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Tomorrow, snow again, old silence. Tonight, I'm awake, wishing for sleep. Against my breasts, your sleeping head, my love. You hold my world together. Paramour of shadows of the dark under. A golden handful of birds' notes as the crimson dawn breaks through the crowded east. And then the third of these cantos, I call it Shadows. You left me standing on the curb in the snow. Then you constructed an aqueduct of dreams. Nearby, the red house sleeps beneath a tree. Night, street light, drugstore. Slowly, the moon is rising out of the ruddy haze. The wind knocks. I rush to lock the door. My heart, my snail, my sail, I haven't seen you naked in so long. In the flame of the flickering fire, a bone flute hums the flux of it. And we'll sort of shift sexes. This is called There's No App for That. This is the hand that led you to bed. This is the hand that caressed your head. This is the hand that unbuckled your belt. This is the hand that unzipped your pants. This is the hand that stroked your sex. This is the hand that slid you in deep, that rocked your buttocks, that squeezed you past sleep. I try to swim 4 to 6 times a week, and it's just incredible, going in the pool and how at this point, after many, many years, I can kick from my toes all the way up, my butt. And this is called laps. In this marriage of water and air, always she is the beginner, teaching her hands and arms to push away the water, to raise her head, to breathe. Though she swims her laps, butterflying up and back, trying to kick loose her leg muscles, the hamstrings spasm, then left foot crosses right, forces her to invent a one-legged way to swim. No more can she hoist her body out of the pool or climb the metal stairs. Instead, she sits in the hydraulic chair, waits for someone to flick the switch. Immobile in air, gravity reclaims her. In the locker room, there's always a woman to pull up her panties, stretch slacks, socks. After years of early bird swims, they know each other's bodies, wrinkling skin, diminishing limbs. Nothing holds them back. Thanks so much.
Chuck Costa and Mira Stanley have been making music together, I think since 2011. They may need to correct me about that. Their music is defined as indie pop. Their CDs include Love, We Are, We Love, and their latest release, In the All Together. Sort of, there's a theme going on here. Huffington Post calls them two of the loveliest male-female voices you might ever hear. Their songs have gone viral, attracting millions of streams on Spotify. This is their third appearance at the Arts Café, so I am qualified to say their voices are a perfect blend of rich harmony, which adds depth to their lyrics. And speaking of lyrics, I have witnessed firsthand a program where Chuck and Mira visit elementary schools to teach songwriting to the very young. They inspire students to create their own lyrics and music. Just last spring, I saw the culmination of one such project at one of our local elementary schools, Oswegatchie, and I was moved to tears. It was just so beautiful. One more thing I might add about Chuck and Mira. They just tied the knot last August, so let's give them an extra round of loud applause, and I welcome to you and introduce to you The Sea, The Sea.
I had, it was the same. I was sitting on that old westbound train. There was a young boy, he was selling snake oil. He said, "Here, take this for the pain." I never was one to believe in a quick fix remedy, oh, but I've got no waste of my sleep. Took that train to the end of the line, over prairies and through the pines. There was a circus car and temptations at the bar and implications to disregard. I never was one to believe that being wild is the same as being free. Oh, I guess I've been that naive. Back to our front yard, the magnolia in the front yard. Your spring's coming soon and all its buds will bloom, the color of my restless heart. And the flowers in the garden know just how they need to grow. They don't get confused, they don't need no walking shoes to get where they need to go. I never was one to believe that being wild is the same as being free. If I ever had an ace up my sleeve,
so much. Like Melanie mentioned, we have a new album out. It's called In the Altogether, and we spend a lot of time playing just as the two of us, but we also found this beautiful musical community in upstate New York, and we were looking for a way to sort of express the feeling of playing with a group of people and what it means to sort of be emotionally vulnerable or sort of naked in a group. So we came across, we had never heard of the phrase "in the altogether" before, but does everybody know what it means?
So this is a song about being naked. Take too long to get through. Don't know how it happens that you do. Don't give it away, I don't want to be that clever. What do we say in the altogether? It's true. Don't know how it turns out that I do. Don't give it away, I want to stay like this forever. So what do you say now that we're in the altogether? last forever. Don't know how it happens in the altogether. I know you know me now. Stay like this forever. Don't know how it turns out in the altogether.
This next song is called All the Diamonds, and it's about how we hopefully know better the second time around.
Before I knew it, I was scared. Before I knew it, I was scared. So many ways to love, so many ways to care. Before I knew it, I was wrong. Before I knew it, I was wrong. Took a back road in the moonlight, and I was gone. All the diamonds and all of the mountains, all the treasures and all of the seas, all the flowers and all of the fields. Bring it back to me. Bring it back to me. After I knew it, I was lost. After I knew it, I was lost. Too much for what it wasn't. Not too much for what it was. After I knew it, I was free. After I knew it, I was free. But the moon shone for on an empty street. All the diamonds and all of the mountains, all the treasures and all of the seas, all the flowers and all of the fields. Bring it back to me. Bring it back to me. All the diamonds, all of the mountains, all the treasures, all of the seas, all the flowers, all of the fields. To bring it back to me. 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 You bring it back to me. All the diamonds and all of the mountains, all the treasures and all of the seas, all the flowers and all of the fields. Bring it back to all the diamonds and all of the mountains, all the treasures and all of the seas, all the flowers and all of the fields. Bring it back to me. Bring it back to me. Yeah.
No secret conversations up here.
It's hard to keep secrets up here. This is a song we sort of don't play very often. I wrote it, we live in upstate New York now, near Albany, kind of in the Berkshires, on the edge of the Berkshires. And I lived here on the shoreline for a long time. I lived down in Guilford and Brantford, and then Mira and I lived in New Haven when we were first together.
Chuck is your former Connecticut state troubadour also.
Nobody knows what that is. So this next song we're going to play, I wrote on the beach in Madison a bunch of years ago, and we sort of, I think it was the poetry of the night that sort of inspired us to play this song, and it came from, as many poems do, I think, a conversation that I had over and over and over again with myself. And this one particular day, I sort of came to some epiphanies and figured out pretty much everything, and then forgot all of it. But as one does. This is called So Many Things. I captured a couple of those thoughts, I think, in this song. Never meant to pretend I know my words, they are my friends, and I stab them in the back when I don't speak from my heart. I know it's a bit like cheating when I grab some paper and a pen and scribble down some words again. At least it's a start. I know someday that the world will end. I don't think that has to be a bad thing. We expect the sun to keep on burning, but that's a lot to ask. If you want to keep a flame from withering, but you got a short supply of oxygen, I think it's worth considering just having fun while it lasts. Hold on too tight to some things, like the fireflies I kept capturing when I was only 7. They died inside the jar. So let them fly, yeah, let them be, let them light the sky. The beauty, let them die, old and free, wherever they are. Truth. Some truths, they are self-evident. We find them almost by accident. Sometimes they seem irrelevant in what we say and what we do. Yeah, do unto others as they to you. Yeah, if it'll hurt me, it'll hurt you too. It's amazing how obvious things are when they are true. Now in this world there are so many things. No one knows so many things. In a way I find that comforting, but I'm not sure why. It's not that I am insecure, that I know less and you know more, but if I knew what was behind every door, the point would pass me by. The point would pass me by. The point would pass me by. much. I think we've got time for a couple more. You want to do that one? I'll do that one. Take that. Well, we're going to do, we'll dedicate this one to Christy. Not the Christy who's behind there's another Christy here, but the Christy who who isn't here tonight, correct? Who is normally the host, and he likes this song. He usually, when he introduces us, enjoys playing with the words, because this song is a palindromic song, which is, if you're a nerd, you know exactly what that is. But it's, I'm just kidding. It's a word or a phrase that can be flipped forwards or backwards and reads the same way. Normally it's like a word like mom or race car. We took the liberty of, which is still officially a palindrome, you can just, the words, you have to flip the words, not all the letters can be flipped, but nobody knows what I'm talking about now because I'm not good at explaining this, but anyway.
It's called Love We Are, We Love.
Love, we are young, too old, too soon, too old, too young. Are we love? We are young, too old, too soon, too old, too young. Are we love? We are young, too old, too soon, too old, too young. Are we love? We are young, too old, too soon, too old, too young. Are we love? Are we love? Are we love? Are we? Thank you. Keep it going? All right, I'm going to leave you with a song. This is written by a duo called the Weepies. And,
Oh, yeah. We learned, we had a phone and a wallet stolen once, and we needed a lesson in impermanence and learned this song, which sort of talks about that, even though it's called Keep It There. And thank you guys again so much for having us. This is our third time here, and we love coming here every year. Thank you.
got $3 burning in my pocket, I know. Got $3 burning in my pocket, I know. I got to keep it there. Got an old ghost locked in my closet, I know. Got an old ghost locked in my closet, I know. I got to keep it there. Came down on it by the rocky, found my heart right where I locked it. Last night like rain on chalk, it's gone like money in my pocket. See those stars shining in your eyes, I know. See those stars shining in your eyes, I know. I got to keep them there. Came down on a bottle rocky, found my heart right where I locked it. Last night like rain on chalk, it's gone like money in my pocket. All my troubles in the rearview mirror, I know. All my troubles in the rearview mirror, I know. I got to keep them there. To keep them there. To keep them there. Thank you.
On to our featured poet. There are some striking parallels between our opening poet, Joan Seliger Sidney, and our distinguished poet and translator, Marilyn Hacker. Both are daughters of Jewish immigrants. Both have confronted serious illness. Both have spent considerable time teaching and studying in France. Ms. Hacker divides her time between New York and Paris. After receiving her degree in Romance languages from NYU in 1964, Ms. Hacker moved to London, where she worked as a book dealer, then editor of the New American Review. Her first collection of poems earned her both the Lamont Poetry Selection from the Academy of American Poets and also the National Book Award. She is twice the recipient of the Lambda Literary Award, not to mention the Lenore Marshall Poetry Prize. She received a host of other honors, including fellowships from the Guggenheim and Ingram Merrill Foundations. She writes and thinks in 2 languages, sometimes 3. Her agility in poetic forms is breathtaking. I was able to detect sonnets, sestinas, villanelles, but also forms I'm not as familiar with, ghazal, glos, pantoum, and renga. Sometimes when the world is out of balance, poets resort to poetic forms to make order out of chaos. In her collection, Winter Numbers, Ms. Hacker tackles the diseases of AIDS and cancer and confronts her own struggle with breast cancer. She retired from teaching at City College of New York and the City University of New York Graduate Center, and in 2013 was inducted to the New York Writers Hall of Fame. Her poems have been described as traditional, radical, colloquial, lyrical, uncouth, yet old-fashioned, startling, passionate, casual, yet intense, and brimming with intelligence. In other words, if there were a title for a championship-level poet, Marilyn Hacker would qualify as a heavyweight. But I will let you discover for yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to present Marilyn Hacker.
Were the mountain women sold as slaves in the city my friend has not written from for 2 weeks? One of the just has given back his medal. I wake up 4 times in the night, soaked with sweat. In the city my friend has not written from, for 2 weeks there was almost enough electricity. I wake up 4 times in the night, soaked with sweat, and change my shirt and go to sleep again. There was almost enough electricity to heat water, make tea, bathe, write emails, and change her shirt and go to sleep again. Her mother has gallstones. Her sister mourns. Heat water, make tea, bathe, write emails to Mosul, New York, London, Beirut. Her sister mourns a teenage son who died in a stupid household accident. To Mosul, Havana, London, Beirut, I change the greeting, change the alphabet. War, like a stupid household accident, changes the optics of a scene forever. I change the greeting, change the alphabet. Hola, morning of light, ya compañera. Change the optics of a scene forever, present and always altogether elsewhere. Morning of roses, kiss you, hasta luego, to all our adolescent revolutions, present and always altogether elsewhere. It seemed as if something would change for good tomorrow. All our adolescent revolutions gone gray drink exiles' coffee, if they're lucky. It seems as if something would change for good tomorrow. She was our conscience and she died too early. The gray exiles drink coffee, if they're lucky. Ghaza's survivors sift through weeping rubble. She was our conscience, but she died too early after she spoke of more than one disaster. Cursing, weeping, survivors sift through rubble. One of the just has given back his medal after he spoke of more than one disaster. How can we sing our songs if we are slaves? And I perhaps ought to have said that morning of light, morning of roses are a kind of just traditional way to say good morning in Arabic. I mean, in Arabic, obviously, but morning of light, morning of roses, morning of jasmine, and what elaborates. And the just, of course, are the Gentiles who saved the lives of Jews during the Shoah, and whose names are listed in Yad Vashem and many other places. Joan reminded me, or reminded us, about this being among the other things of National Breast Cancer Month, which I didn't even know. And this is another elegiac poem written a long time ago, just after the great American poet Audre Lorde died of breast cancer, and it was called Year's End, in memory of Audre Lorde and Sonny Wainwright. Twice in my quickly disappearing 40s, someone called while someone I loved and I were making love to tell me another woman had died of cancer. 7 years apart and 2 different lovers. Underneath the numbers, how lives are braided, how those women's deaths and lives, lived and died, were interleaved also. Does lip touch on lip a memento mori? Does the blood-thrust nipple against its eager mate recall, through lust, a breast's transformations sometimes are lethal? Now or later, what's the enormous difference? If one day is good, is a day sufficient? Is it fear of death with which I'm so eager to live my life out now and in its possible permutations with the one I love? Only 4 days later, she was on a plane headed west across the Atlantic, work-bound. Men and women mortally wounded where we love and nourish, dying at 30, 40, 50, not on barricades, but in beds of unfulfilled promise. Tell me, senators, what you call abnormal. Each day's obits read as if there's a war on. 58-year-old poet, dead of cancer, warrior woman, laid down with the other warrior women. Both times when the telephone rang, I answered, wanting not to, knowing I had to answer. Go from 2 bodies, infinite approach to a crest of pleasure, through the disembodied voice from a distance saying one loved body was clay, one wave of mind burst and broken. Each time we went back to each other's hands and mouths as to a requiem where the chorus sings death with irrelevant and amazing bodily music. This was, page just opened. In fact, this, yes. I was talking with another friend, the wonderful novelist Mary Gordon, who's done us the honor of being here tonight. We're talking about novellas and writers of novellas, and this is a poem that came from an anecdote told to me by my now late friend, the wonderful Canadian novelist Mavis Gallant, and who died in her 90s 2 years ago. And if you don't know her work, which is being reissued by New York Review Books, go find it. And Mavis was Canadian. She moved to France in 1952 when she was 22 years old, having worked as a journalist in Montreal and deciding that if she was going to make it as a writer, as a fiction writer, give herself a year to get things published and write and get things published, and she did. And she talked to me once about something that happened when she was taking a bus from actually, I think it was just from a train station to a small town in the south of France called Menton. And this is called 1953, the bus to Menton. Her own displacement seemed easy in comparison. She had been a reporter. She would be a novelist. And her country, she'd write about it, seemed provincial. The war was over. Near the roadside, sheaves were tied. Gossip behind her, a new dialect. She listened. Beyond sprawled olive terraces, unlike the farms of home whose outbuildings circled like a garrison. Her notebook's lined page waited to be kissed. The noon heat condensed into a mortal chill up her spine. A blondish man with rolled-up sleeves had pushed the bus window open. Sunlight glistened on the long number tattooed on one of his sunburned arms. And this is a pair of poems in two voices, and I know it's always seems a little more than a little audacious to borrow the voice, as it were, the voices of people, not fictional people, but people who had real voices. And in this case, the two voices are those of a Palestinian poet, a Palestinian woman poet, and an Israeli woman poet, Fadwa Tukan and Dalia Ravikovic, who were in real life friends. Fadwa Tukan died in her late 80s, and I think about 12 or so years ago, and Dalia Ravikovic, who was younger, died of a heart attack in her late 60s, a few years later. But these poems are obviously in the voices of fictional characters who, in some way, resemble those people. And so the first one is in Fadwa's voice, and the second one in Dalia's. And the first one does relate an incident that actually happened in the childhood of Fadwa Tukan, who was born, I think, in 1919 or 1920. So she would have been 10 years old in around 1930. When I was made a prisoner, and she grew up in Palestine. When I was made a prisoner in my father's house, my mother turned away, swallowing her words. The potholed path to school became a vision of my lost future. It was not even because of a letter. A boy from the boys' school entrusted a flower, an almond sprig, for me to my little brother. That was intercepted by our middle brother. I was 12. I was no longer to leave the house. If that twig in blossom sullied an imagined flower, the metaphor wasn't mine. I had no words for my ignorance or innocence. I copied letter after wobbly letter on my school slate. My vision was astigmatic, strained. Was there double vision, God's eyes? 6 months later, my eldest brother came back, his studies done, doctor of letters. He shelved his book in the attic room of the house that became a hive, crawling and buzzing with words and dripping the honey of words on a carpet of flowers. My days were dust and water, starch and flour, chores, silence, shame. I could not envision the school child I'd been or what I would be. Words receded, I spoke so little. I brought my brother his coffee and shaving water. The rest of the house was dawned silent. He was writing a letter. No, something else. Carefully, hearing each letter that rounded or plunged like the bud or the root of a flower, and the vowels' perfume pervaded the house as he weighed the choices that shaped his revision. "Do you still care about poetry?" asked my brother, and began to recite a mellifluous ladder of words. "Take this book, copy this poem, make a list of the words you don't know, mark the small vowel for each letter. Learn it and recite it to me," said my brother. "We are dust and ash, and beauty is brief as a flower. But a stanza's a room, a single line is the house you can build. Throw open the doors to your vision." I live in my own house now. In my line of vision, an almond tree flowers. I live by words, and on each page I write a letter to my brothers. And the word for house in Arabic is also the word for a line of poetry, incidentally. And stanza, of course, means a room. Dahlia and Fadwa, different speaker. When I see her come through the orchard toward my house, I begin composing answers to the words with which she'll challenge me, her vision precise and focused, as if every letter were drawn beforehand. She stops, stoops toward a flower she doesn't pick, and the word I'm left is sister. As if she were coming to visit a younger sister after a long absence, as if this stranger's house were where she'd watched my awkward gestures flower to eloquence, as if I had measured her words from a wider world each time a letter arrived, message inhabited by a vision. But I was the only messenger of my vision. My father died. There was no brother, no sister, but the orphan's clan of branching letters I taught myself. I moved from house to house with a dented trunk, a few books, many words, an acid fruit preceding its own flower. Am I named for a traitor or for a flower? Blood and fire have cindered and stained my vision. I curse their politics, they praise my words. What answer can I give my older sister when I open the door, welcome her into my house, and she hands me the incriminating letter, while I imagine opening a letter after scouring the sink, dusting a loaf with flour, that tells me my house no longer is my house. Beyond the window and my field of vision, my son is shouting something to his sister, and it's hard, all at once, to make out their words. But in my yellow kitchen, these are only words I can't pronounce correctly, in the letters of my sister's language that is sister to mine. I watched her flame and flower as boys threw stones, spliced shots on television, and felt the leaning walls of my bright house. In that threatened house, at a loss for words, my letter would be subject to revision, flow or gutter, never reach my sister. This is yet another, that was 2 poems for 2 poets, and this is yet another poem for a poet. In this case, the great American poet Muriel Rukeyser, a lifelong New Yorker. Crepuscule with Muriel, and that is also a tip of the hat to Thelonious Monk. Instead of a cup of tea, instead of a milk silk whelk of a cup of nearly 6 o'clock tea time, cup of a stumbling block, cup of an afternoon unredeemed by talk, cup of a cut brown loaf, of a slice, a lack of butter, blueberry jam that's almost black. Instead of tannin seeping into the cracks of a pot, the void of an hour seeps out, infects the slit of a cut I haven't the wit to fix with a surgeon's needle threaded with fine gauge silk, as a key would thread the cylinder of a lock. But no key threads the cylinder of the lock. Late afternoon light, transitory, licks the place of the absent cup with its rough tongue, flicks itself out beneath the wheel's revolving spoke. Taut thoughts gone, with a blink of attention, slack. A vision of death and distance in the mix. She lost her words, and how did she get them back when the corridor of a day was a lurching deck? The dream life, logic in codes and nervous ticks, she translated to a syntax which connects intense and unfashionable politics with morning coffee, Hudson sunsets, sex. Then the short circuit of the final stroke, the end toward which all lines looped out, then broke. What a gaze out the window interjects. On the southeast corner, a black lab box, tugged as the light clicks green toward a late day walk by a plump brown girl in a purple anorak. The Bronx-bound local comes rumbling up the tracks out of the tunnel over West Harlem blocks, whose windows gleam on the animal warmth of bricks, rouged by the fluvial light of 6 o'clock. Okay, I'll read two new poems, both written last year. This is a series of Renga, which often, and in one case I did collaborate with another poet, doing a whole book of them. The other poet is the Palestinian-American poet Dima Shahabi. In this case, I was just picking up the thread from myself from Renga to Renga, which is to say the thread, just a word from the last stanza of the previous slightly connected or unconnected poem. Anything else? Al-Mutanabi is one of the most famous of the classical Arabic poets, and one of his most famous lines is the desert, the sword, and my horse know me, and my pen, and my lance, and my notebook, and I refer to him in the and I think everything else is, and Rayhanli is a town in Turkey just on the Syrian border. And oh yes, and Bara Shakar as-Sayab is one of Iraq's most famous poets, and who wrote a very long poem about the rain, which has been translated into various languages, and also a lot of poems about exile. So this is called Calligraphies. Self-referential, a text that explains itself. Al-Mutanabi, known by lance, pen, desert, sword. My horse and my notebook think what I am thinking through an orgy of cadence. I loved one woman whose heart gave out when she read my letter that I'd return. He could not return, price on his head, defector. His mother, with whom he talked about books on Skype through bomb-shattered nights in her once tranquil suburb, was going, not back to the mountains, not Beirut, road of the insurrection in her cells, could not return. Obsessive return to the site of departure or abandonment. Checkpoint south of Rayhanli, a bar in the Rue Charlot, something changed for good. She got up and walked away. A guard waved them through. And the next day and the next were going to be different. It is different waking in the city that used to be your home. You are what you are, knowing you are not that anymore. As old as your friend when he wrote his late pages, sparring with Bachot, while his sorrel-haired muse fixed his lunch, pining for cities. The question of lunch, whether a parenthesis of conversation in a cheerful public place, Tarmarbuta, Hamra Street, exiles and expats eating makdous and kibbeh in 3 languages, or standing near the fridge with lebne, 2 verbs, and a spoon. At least 2 verbs for departure, 5 for desire, come swiftly to mind from her schoolgirl lexicon. And all the horses, learned when she was younger, hoped to ride away on this new alphabet across deserts of habit and waste through the 6-vocabled dawn. Rainy-fingered dawn prods the grimy scaffolding outside the window. Wet slate roofs, blurry slate sky swell the list of erasures. You count down, waking. A sea north of the morning, a wind from elsewhere, idea of departure and an overstayed welcome. She has overstayed her transit visa more than 6 weeks now. She was refused a work permit, but goes daily to her class, translates as Sayeb's rain song with them to English, not their first language. No news from the Ministry of Labor, war news from home. A long walk home down the Mango and Sari Street, then the boulevard's cheap phone cards to Senegal, small real estate agents who upscale old buildings, pricing the immigrants out. I'd rather live here. I'd rather live elsewhere, anywhere, than in my worn-out old skin. Under bruise-red skin, the Pakistani mango's sweet, wet orange flesh. Mix it with labneh in a blue-purple bowl from Konya, where your Kurdish friend said he'd first heard Rumi in his mother tongue. All of you sharing treasures that no one bequeathed to you. He's inherited another histrionic refugee, curses silently his friend, lavish with others' time and ideas. Thinks of his uncle's trek from Lodz to Liverpool, thanks to a letter, and calls a man who knows a man in the right ministry. Give the right answer in the right tone of voice to the right person who ate the right thing for lunch and drank the right dose of caffeine. You may walk out with the right papers to claim your identity card. Your day relentlessly, you might say, self-referential. I think if I may read 2 more poems, is there? I know you've all been sitting here for a long time listening to a lot of wonderful things. One more poem? Yeah. Well, these are 3 short poems talking about one of the ways form in poetry or enters the vocabulary is somebody invents something at one time or another, and then somebody else does the same thing, and then somehow it's there. A poet I admire enormously, the American poet Hayden Carruth, who died about 10 years ago in his late 80s, invented a form called the paragraph, and despite its name, it's not a prose poem. I will not go into exactly how the form works, except that it's 15 lines long. And I've written over the years quite a few poems in this form, and I'll just read a few of them, no, 3 of them. These 2 are from a sequence. A question mark in yellow overalls. I could read. I was 3. I slept with my pink horse. My one doll's name was VJ. She'd been given to me to celebrate the victory over Japan, that is to say, the bomb I'd spent my school days taking shelter from. I couldn't tie my shoes, but Reddy the fox, Tootle the engine who jumped off the tracks, spelled me their stories on my mother's lap, despite weak eyes and poor small motor skills. My grandparents were dead, not in pogroms, not in the camps, of strokes and heart attacks, merely immigrants, not deportees. When you die, does everything just stop? Another. I almost gushed to my friend about a movie I'd just seen, the son of a concentration camp survivor's homage. Mother tells son the volumes she remembers. Now she's 80-something, tangos in high-heeled elegance over the abyss of memory. But we were balancing fine points of translation with forkfuls of ratatouille in a cafe the freezing afternoon of New Year's Eve, and both of us had other things to say. Our plates were cleared. With habitual diffidence, she handed a new manuscript to me and took to the ladies momentary leave. I turned a page and read the dedication to her father, who died at Bergen-Belsen. And the last one of these, which is for Hayden Carruth. 69. Quadruple bypass, yes, he had it. What happens next is anybody's guess. After the surgeon's pre-op visit, he pulled the tubes and needles out, got dressed, and stalked outside to smoke a cigarette. The surgeon threatened not to operate. Old heart, old curmudgeon, old genius, terrified old man, who more than anyone knows form is one rampart of sanity. Your mind is ringing like a fire alarm, and you still smoke 3 packs a day. Not lover, barely friend, from this long distance, I break your rule and say, stay in the present tense, stay in the present tense. Okay, one last short poem, and thank you so much all for being here. And this is a kind of a bookend to the first one. This is dedicated to a different person named Fadwa Suleiman, who is a Syrian writer and was a well-known actress. She's a young woman in her early 40s who dropped everything to join what was at first a peaceful revolution, hoping for democracy and times changing, and now she's in exile. She and I were taking a walk one day, and I said something to her in bad Arabic. We were crossing the bridge, and then we saw a man whom we both recognized, I because I'd seen him at a political meeting. He was another Syrian refugee, and she because she had seen him giving a speech to the crowd just where she did before the clock tower in Homs in Syria. So that was the genesis of this poem. Said the old woman who barely speaks the language, freedom is a dream and we don't know whose. Said the insurgent who was now in exile, When I began to write the story, I started bleeding. Freedom is a dream, and we don't know whose. That man I last saw speaking in front of the clock tower when I began to write the story, I started bleeding 5 years after I knew I'd have no more children. That man I last saw speaking in front of the clock tower turned an anonymous corner and disappeared. 5 years after I knew I'd have no more children, my oldest son was called up for the army, turned an anonymous corner, and disappeared. My nephew, my best friend, my second sister, whose oldest son was called up for the army, are looking for work now in other countries. Her nephew, his best friend, his younger sister, a doctor, an actress, an engineer, are looking for work now in other countries, stumbling, disillusioned in a new language. A doctor, an actress, an engineer wrestle with the rudiments of grammar, disillusioned, stumbling in a new language, hating their luck and knowing they're lucky. Wrestling with the rudiments of grammar, the old woman who barely speaks the language hated her luck. I know that I am lucky, said the insurgent, who is now an exile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilyn. I neglected to mention the title of her book, A Stranger's Mirror. Important stuff. So that brings us to the conclusion of our program. Thank you, Joan Seliger Sidney, for your books, Bereft and Blessed, Body of Diminishing Motion, at the book table. Thank you, The Sea, CDs for sale, and of course, Marilyn's book. Don't forget to come back to our final program for the fall, November 4th, where we will be presenting Wesley McNair, the Poet Laureate of Maine, who's described as one of the great storytellers of contemporary poetry. And music will be by the multi-talented Nora Fox, and the opening segment will be a short play by yours truly, Skydiver. So we look forward to seeing you then, and hopefully Christy will be released from his abduction. Good night and good poem.